All right, welcome back, everyone. Where we last left off, you were looking at this page here, and as you look down here, it looks a little bit large. I realized I had zoomed in a bit. This is actually normal zoom view, and these paragraphs are pretty long. I think they're actually longer than we need. We have a couple other issues, and that is now we have this column doing the same thing as the other one. It's 15 pixels off, and we want to offset it. This time, when we want to offset it on the large size, let's see where we're at when we resize to a medium. And so, just to kind of get where we're at, because on the medium here, we turn that into 2. I think this actually is going to display just fine at medium. When we go small, that article appears first, then the news after it. I think that's appropriate. Interestingly enough, look at the news, that's offset. We don't have that extra 15 pixels there. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this. It makes me wonder if my HTML is right. But it may just be one of those where when we're doing different sizes, it tends to do that. So we need to push this over to the right. Let's also clean up our headlines, because that looks pretty boring if it says the same things over and over. So let me adjust that, and then I'll show you what I did. All right, well, I started adding some, modifying some of the quotes that I have here under news, and I suddenly saw this thing sort of break. And the text from inflammable means flammable ends up wrapping around. So I was like, wait a minute, what is wrong? And I thought, well, maybe it's the kind of tag I'm using. You know, maybe it's because it doesn't want me to use an article or a section. But then as I looked a little closer, I found my error. It was right here. I've put an equal sign instead of a dash. Now we'll go back 100% view. Let's see if everything looks normal. Yeah, see, they're all lined up normally. All right, so that was what the problem was. I think we're good on here. These are a little bit bigger than I thought they would be, so I'm going to reduce the size of these. I'm also thinking about tightening up the width here, because I think that's a little wider than it needs to be. So we're going to experiment with one little thing here. We're going to try 3 instead of 8 and just see what happens. News is a little bit tighter in here. It matches overall the width. Let's look here at what we're doing here. We do have borders, so I do think that is going to create some possible issues. So I need to go back and use the same thing on both of these. So now comes the question, do I make that a little bit more narrow too? I think I should. So a lot of this becomes going back and just fine-tuning everything. So instead of a large 4, let's try a large 3. And then see what happens. Top is a little bit more narrow. This is more narrow. I think all in all, that's probably pretty good. These paragraphs are a little bit too small, so we're going to have to probably mix that up a little bit with our CSS later. The next thing I want to do is, now that we have these tags are working right, we've got our 2 columns good again, let's take a look and see if there's any other elements we need. It looks like we have this wrapped, looks like a big, it's not really an image, it looks like it's some line of code or possibly a logo or something. It could be a pull quote. I'm going to do it as an image though, and then we're going to add this little piece at the bottom and this little piece over here. So part of this is going to Bootstrap, seeing what you want to use. I think this is an image. Bootstrap has a little feature that we can use for that called thumbnail, so let's take a look at it. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to use the Bootstrap thumbnail, like you see here, for images. And I'm going to use that. You'll notice for the thumbnail, they stick it inside of a grid. We don't want to do that. We want to just do it kind of like what you see here. A div with a class of thumbnail, an image. We're not going to have any text, but if you wanted to add it, you could add that as well. So basically, that's going to be simple. We're going to drop our image inside of it. There's a couple paragraphs down in our article, so I'm going to open up the article. Let's take a look at what we have here. All right, our thumbnail, we have a problem with the size on here. And it takes up the full width because it's a div. So what we're going to do here is we're going to play around with this a little bit. And we're going to change our CSS for that. I'm going to give it a class of medium thumb, and that's where I'm going to set the width and float it. So I want my CSS back. I'm going to do it before my @media signs here. I'm going to put medium thumb. I'm going to set the same width that the image was. I'm going to float it to the right. Let's see how it's looking now. And there we go. We should add a little left-hand margin as well. Anytime you float items to the right, you want to add a little bit of left-hand margin. We're going to use 15 pixels. That seems to be what we're seeing a lot of. There we have it. And now we've got our article. We're starting to look more like this. We're going to add this little feature here, which looks like it says it's an email sign-up. So we're going to look for another component that looks like that and add it underneath. Before we do that, let me just pause here so you can see the code that we just added, this div here, and added the class medium thumb, and we added that to our CSS on the right. Okay, so we're looking right here. It's an email sign up, and it looks like we have some text, an input, and a button. If we go to the components on Bootstrap, look at this, recipients, email, @example.com. We want to use that, which is an input group like so. So we're just going to go ahead and copy that straight from Bootstrap. But we're going to have to insert it inside of our own little grid. So we're going to create a grid for that. Remember, it's an email sign up. So we're going to put it at the bottom of our article. I'm going to give a div, class equals row. I'm going to create it as a row. And inside of here, we're going to have two divs. And I think we should go with small. I think we're okay here. And then it should be about even sized, I believe, is what we want to do. And inside of here, you can have the email sign up. Our last header was a header 2, so we're going to put a header 3. Okay, so we put a little div with the column 6. We're going to do another one. Same class. And inside of that div is where we put what we just copied, which is the input group. Like so. I'm going to pause here so you can, let's first of all see if it works. Join our mailing list. It looks like this is down a little bit too low from here. So we're going to need to sort of center that. We'll do that in just a moment. But for now, let's look at the HTML that we just created. And that is it right here. There is the call to action to join. Here's the div, small 6, input group. And we're going to need to figure out how to center that information. But there's the HTML to begin with. I think what I'll do is I'll save that for the next video tutorial. We'll center that vertically, and then we'll add our little piece to the news at the bottom. So I'll leave you with this code. this is the row that creates the email sign up right there. Before you go, don't forget to click save on your mockup.